Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. I am alive, I am here, I am present, and we are going to be talking about the books that I've read in the last 7 days. And by alive I mean I am finally not feeling rubbish every minute of the day, only just sometimes through the day. I am here with this mug. I did contemplate, I actually was looking at some of my very beautiful teacups and went, no, this is where I am at this point in my life. And it's just peppermint tea because we need to stay on track. Alrighty, I am racing the camera battery on this particular camera for the moment. My other battery is charging, so we are hopefully going to get through this wrap up before I have to switch out the batteries. And I apologize that I'm getting weird shadows from my glasses, but we are well and truly now in winter, so lighting this apartment is an absolute nightmare. This week I read 9 things, a total of 2,281 pages. I had 2 rereads, 1 DNF, and 4 books for projects, which I was hoping that my queer sports romance that doesn't feature hockey romance vlog was going to come out this past week. I'm aiming for next week now, and I am in the middle of a sapphic romance reading vlog. So fingers crossed that they come out sooner rather than later. I just need to edit them. That has been the harder part of filming content, even while unwell. Both my rereads this week were rereads from 2017. So just as I was kind of starting my booktube adventure and only very lightly dipping my toes into romance books. So I am going to talk about them a little bit more in depth than I would normally for a reread book, because it has been so long since I read them. The first book was Off Base by Annabeth, which was the first book in her Out of Uniform series, which is a military romance series featuring queer stories. And it was the very first Annabeth book that I read. I think I got an e-arc from NetGalley. I believe that's how I kind of stumbled across Annabeth writing. And I remember I really enjoyed the series, but as I was rereading it, I'm like, I can't actually remember anything that happened in this series. And I was immersive ebook and audiobook reading, although towards the end I was just listening to the audiobook because that's when I started having trouble concentrating on words on a page. So this is the story of Zach, who is a Navy SEAL who's recently graduated, like become a full SEAL. He and his team are waiting to be shipped out for the first time, and he's queer and he's being harassed by one of the other members on his team, and so he is really reluctant to talk to anyone, including his superiors, about the fact that a teammate is harassing him. Ultimately, he asks for permission to live off base, and his commanding officer, who suspects that something is going on but doesn't know what it is, and his commanding officer is great, says that he has a rental property that he needs to fix up, and he's happy for Zach to stay there if he's willing to help do the renovations. And Zach agrees to that. And then the love interest in the story is Pike, who is a friend, ? Zach has always been a little bit uncomfortable around Pike because Pike is gay. He's very comfortable with who he is. Zach is very uncomfortable with who he is. So there is a lot of unpacking for Zach to do in this book. And Pike ends up needing a place to stay and ends up moving in with Zach and helping him with the renovations because his mum flips houses, so he's very knowledgeable of how to do various things, whereas Zach is learning on the fly. And there's an attraction between the two of them, and they begin to act on it, and Pike is sort of helping Zach to navigate his feelings and his understanding of himself. Meanwhile, the harassment at work continues to the point that Zach finds himself isolated, and when he is on a mission and he is unwell, he has appendicitis, his teammates don't actually cut him any slack until he physically collapses. We also have Zach's family, who are deeply religious and very homophobic and do not understand when they find out that he's in love with Pike what to do with that. So there's a lot of things in the book that are triggers, but it was a really interesting time to go back and reread that and to put all the pieces together because I've forgotten everything about it. But the writing was everything that I remembered about Annabeth, and I've read her books since. Like every time a new release comes out, eventually I get to it and I read it. So I will be continuing to reread the Out of Uniform series when I get a chance to. I've got all of the ebooks now, so I can do that as I see fit. My second reread for the week was Peter Darling by S.A. Chant, which this is the beautiful Rainbow Crate edition with gorgeous sprayed edges. I just have to show off this book because it's stunning. This is the hardcover and these are the end papers. Like, it is a truly beautiful book. It is signed, and again, this is a book that came out in 2017. I read it roughly around then. Also, the inside flap has nutrition facts, but it also lists the tropes and the representation and all of that in here. So this is a Peter Pan reimagining featuring a trans mask Peter Pan and James Hook. And we begin with Peter Pan returning to Neverland 10 years later. Through the course of the story, we discover that Peter Pan was Wendy. Neverland was Pan's way of entering into a world where they felt most who they were. And anytime they went back to England, they were forced into the role of Wendy, and that was deeply, deeply disturbing and troubling for them, and caused a huge amount of gender dysphoria. And a lot of that storyline, which we see in sort of flashbacks, is quite traumatic. Pan has returned to Neverland because they're finally free. But when they get there, they find the Lost Boys have made a deal with Hook. A lot of his antics, where he plays at war, are not seen as favorably as they once were. And so Pan literally starts up another fight with Hook, despite the fact that they've had nothing to do with each other for 10 years. But it's almost like the two of them can't help themselves. There's a whole lot of things that happen. A number of characters are killed because of the fight between the two of them, which forces them to reflect a lot on their actions and how and why they interact with one another. Pan is obviously younger than James, and you can tell because of the way that they understand the world. Hook is very much able to talk about their relationship and how and why they behave the way that they do. Pan, on the other hand, is still very immature in that sense, until they're forced together and they have to confront everything about their relationship. And they begin to learn secrets about each other, which Pan is like, you're going to hold that against me. And Hook is like, sometimes your enemies are the best people to know these things about you because they might be the only people who understand. And what I really love about this book in particular, and there's some really gorgeous quotes, particularly in the second half of the book, is that we begin to see that Neverland is a place. In this world, it exists. This is like an urban fantasy story with a romance. Neverland exists, and the people who find it are the people who are able to tell the best kind of stories. In this case, we find out that Hook found Neverland from a very young age. When entering into Neverland, he became who he wanted to be, which was this pirate-like character who was confident and suave and was able to exist in the way that he saw himself, just like Peter. Except that when Peter entered into Neverland, Peter is a master storyteller, and so his entire narrative shapes every single thing about it. He's that powerful in this space. And when they're in Neverland, they forget who they are and they fully embody these characters that they have created. And they act out the scenes that play out in the narrative that they have created for themselves. In which case, Pan's is a hyper-masculine kind of, we must be at war because you are the enemy kind of thing. But eventually, Hook is the first one to wake up and realize, hang on, this isn't my life. And I do have a life outside of Neverland. And he also recognizes that there is a much stronger connection between him and Pan. But Peter Pan is very afraid to re-enter the world because of the way that the real world sees him. And so it's really interesting what happens, because it does end with them outside of Neverland and the life that they build. And this edition has a bonus story of James Harrington, who is James Hook, his life and how he entered into Neverland and what happened post. So I really loved coming back to this story. And I think as someone with, 10 years now of reading and reviewing books and reading lots of different stories, being able to talk about this book in this particular way and to see exactly what's happening. Like, is it the most perfectly written book? No, I think there are parts that possibly could have been refined a little bit, but the actual story itself, because as a traditional story, Peter Pan is a very nonsensical book, and when you read it, the characters in it are not likable. This takes the essence of those stories and shows how and why, the reasons why they might be unlikable. Peter is not likable for the first half of this book. You read it and you're like, you are a spoiled, immature child who is cranky at not getting your way. And you learn more and you understand and you unpack and you realize why he is the way he is, and Neverland amplifies the worst parts of his personality because he believes that's what he needs to be. If you have never read Peter Darling, I would highly recommend it. It is a really, really wonderful book. Anything by S.A. Chant is wonderful. Alrighty, the 4 project books that I had this week were The Open Era by Edward Schmit, Totally Geeked by Becca Jackson, Red Light by Frances M. Thompson, and Sweater Weather by Shannon O'Connor. So hopefully those 2 vlogs will be out in the next couple of weeks for you to hear more about those books. Then I read the audiobook for Marrying the Guide by Nora Phoenix and narrated by Michael Dean. I was listening to the audiobook. Again, this was another novella length audiobook that I had. It was very short and sweet. We're following Ono, who is I didn't make notes on this. He is a tourist in the States. He's either Swedish or Dutch. I can't remember which one it is. And he's there visiting family. He ends up trying all of these things with a wilderness guide called Hal. And he is very clumsy and he is not very good, and he feels like his confidence is completely shot when he tries these things and he's not good at them. And Hal is really encouraging and doesn't make fun of him when things don't go wrong, like when he struggles to get in his, I think it's a kayak, or when he's on a wilderness hike. But Hal is just really impressed that Ono is willing to try new things and to get out of his comfort zone. And the two strike up a friendship and then eventually a relationship. It does talk very much about love after divorce. Ono is divorced and his confidence is shot in the relationship department because of the relationship with his ex. And the story just features a whole lot of little cute dates and things like that. And it was very sweet. Then I read Stars in Your Eyes by Kacen Callender. I finally picked it up. This was one of the tri-chapter books that I had and I just decided to go for it. So it won't feature in a vlog, but this is the story of rival actors falling in love while working on a movie set. You have Maddie and Logan. Maddie is sort of the up-and-coming, very guileless, maybe a little bit less polished actor who struggles initially with the role because he's only just been cast. And Logan is kind of the bad boy of Hollywood. And they're starring together in a romance, and they're kind of, the characters that they're playing embody kind of their own personal traits. So you have a golden boy and a bad boy kind of character in this film, and they are forced to spend time together, and Logan has previously kind of trashed Maddie in the media, and they're having to come back from that. What we find out is that Logan has been in acting from a very, very young age. His father has controlled his career, controls a lot of his money, and put him into situations where he ended up being abused by men much older than him, in situations created by his father in order for him to get ahead in his career, and nothing was ever said or done about it. And he has carried that his whole time. So he has substance abuse problems. He struggles with connecting with people. He disconnects from a lot of his friendships after all of this kind of happens in his late teens. The book does deal with biphobia and homophobia. There is an on-page rape sequence between Logan and a different actor, and it really highlights a lot of conversations around consent and the fact that consent can be withdrawn at any time, and if you push past when consent is withdrawn, you are entering into assault regardless of what you believe is happening. It doesn't matter whether the person has ever played hard to get before. If they say no, no means no. So it was quite a difficult book to read at times. You get to kind of towards the very end of the book and you feel like it's not going to be a romance because Maddie and Logan split. It is what happens after that split, and it is years later where they reconnect, because Logan drops off the face of the planet, and that's because he gets himself help finally, and he separates from the life that he had before. I'm really glad that I read it. Kacen Callender writes stories really well, but it is very, very hard to read at times. It is well worth picking up, I think, for the conversations that it has around Hollywood and the way what happens to people in Hollywood, as well as the treatment of queer actors. Yeah, a very powerful book. And then I read something which is probably far more lighthearted. It is a hockey rom-com called Bar Down Baby by Kath Richards, which comes out in a couple of weeks. And this book was utterly delightful. It is such a good book. It does feature bisexual rep, which I didn't realize at the time, so it does perfectly fit in with my Pride Month reading. It also features OCD rep on the part of our male protagonist. This book is single POV. We are only in our main character's head. Her name is Hannah. At the beginning of the book, we open, she's at her job. She's a janitor. She cleans the practice facility for the Utah hockey team. She is 6 months pregnant at the time that the book opens. I think it's 6 months. She fell pregnant during a one-night stand in New York. She met a really great guy. They hit it off. They had a one-night stand. He gave her his number and wanted her to call. And then there are a number of reasons why she didn't afterwards, mostly because they were living in different states. She also feels like she's a little bit of a mess and that people judge her for the way that she lived her life growing up. And then through a series of sort of reflections and flashbacks, she finds out that she's pregnant, and then she finds out that he's a hockey player playing for a different state. She still has his number and she considers calling, but she doesn't want him to feel like she is trying to go after his money, so she doesn't. And then on this particular morning when she's cleaning at the practice facility, she runs into Barry. And I love that his name is Barry. That just makes me so happy. Anyway, Barry is in this practice facility, and she's like, what the hell are you doing here? It turns out he's just been traded to the team. She knows absolutely zero about hockey. She has no idea what he does, how much money he makes. She thinks that he's bad at hockey because he's been traded, and it turns out he is one of the top defensemen in the league, or one of the most well-known, well-loved defensemen in the league. That entire sequence, when she found that out, was laugh out loud funny. She ends up, admitting that the baby is his, and he is determined to be part of their life. He doesn't want her to do it alone. He is genuinely a very, very sweet guy, and he loves kids, has always wanted to be a dad. He thinks that she is wonderful. He really loved the very short time that he spent with her in New York and was crushed when she didn't call. And that's her think that she is working through the fact that she doesn't believe that she deserves a relationship or that people can like her for who she is. She just feels like she's too chaotic for that. But he is determined to prove her wrong. Like, this is 100% a he falls first. She is very slow on the uptake in this. He wants them to live together and co-parent, and he asks for a trial period of living with her so that she can see that he's genuine, that he wants to help, that he wants to be there and support her. He agrees to nothing to do with a relationship, though that doesn't stop him from flirting. He even moves into her house, into her very tiny little basement with a terrible bed that he ends up sleeping on the couch, which her entire family dubs the murder basement because she's planning on renovating the house before the baby comes, and he helps her out. And this book features so many tropes that I actually do not love. I do not love a surprise baby trope. Or a surprise pregnancy. I don't love it when a female protagonist or a love interest constantly goes on about, no, I can't accept your money, even when the person is like, no, I'm offering this to you. There's no strings attached to it. He genuinely wants to help her, and he's so sweet about the way that he goes about it. And she is just like, Hannah is just the every person. Like, I can totally understand exactly why she is the way she is. It wasn't irritating, and I think that is a massive credit to Kath Richards' writing style, because it can be really frustrating when you read a character who's constantly like, no, I must do this on my own. I get it. I'm a hyper independent person as well. I must do things on my own. I understand that. But if you don't write it well, it comes across as just being a pain in the ass. And that was not it at all. And there is not a lot of hockey on page. There is, in the second half of the book, a lot of connection to the team, which is really, really lovely. And there's a lot of her family being really heavily involved and really positive and supportive. Her brother, when she finds out that the baby's father is a professional hockey player and is Barry, is like, he is beside himself. One of the first scenes where I was laughing so hard I had to stop reading temporarily was because she went to her first hockey game and she took her brother and her sister, and that she was gifted, she was in Barry's seat, so she was gifted a bag of, merch to wear for the game. And she's going through it and she pulls out a jersey and some hoodies and gear and whatever. And her brother completely shamelessly goes, can I have the jersey? And she's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And it's Barry's jersey. And she's like, yeah, you have it, whatever. And she has absolutely no idea of the significance of it. I about died laughing in that sequence. So I love this. I have pre-ordered a physical copy from Kath's website ages ago. I did receive an early copy for review, and highlight of my week. Seriously. An absolute highlight. It was just delightful. And that is my reading for the last week. I have a few titles for the projects that I'm doing. I have a couple of sapphic romances, The Floral Arrangement by Elizabeth Lilly and Fragments of a Fallen Star, that I'm going to try for my sapphic reading vlog. And I'm hoping that later this afternoon I'm going to reread Rebound Control so I can annotate it while I am reading. I'm hoping this is today's book, but we shall see. In the comments, I'd love to know, have you read any of these books, or are you planning on picking any of them up? Feel free to let me know down below. Otherwise, feel free to leave a baby emoji, because I don't love stories with babies, but I really love Bar Down Baby. Like, that was great. And also, I forgot to say, I love the title of this book. Like, it's a hockey title, but it's not one of the ones that gets used all of the time. So I loved it. Tangent aside, I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.